Access show notes and learn about our English courses for economists by visiting our website, EnglishForEconomists.com. Hello and welcome. I am Alan Robert and I am your host at the English for Economists podcast. My goal is to present you with practical, non-technical vocabulary that you can use to talk about different aspects of the economy. Everything you'll hear is useful, and learning the words I'm going to teach you will make you a more confident speaker of English. This is podcast number 4, and today our topic is international aid. Let me begin by saying that the topic of international aid is very, very big, with lots of specialized language. But today we'll cover some of the most basic, useful vocabulary, including donor. A donor is a person or institution that gives away something, especially money, which is called a donation, a donor. Recipient. A recipient is a person or institution that receives something, like a donation. Humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is usually short-term help, like money, food, or medical supplies. Humanitarian aid. Technical assistance. Technical assistance is the sharing of information or skills or instruction, or technical data. That's technical assistance. Tied aid. Tied aid is foreign aid that must be spent in the country providing the aid. Tied aid. Bilateral aid. Bilateral aid is assistance given by a government directly to the government of another country. Bilateral. So bi, that implies two. Bilateral. Multilateral aid. That's assistance provided by governments to international organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Now, careful with the pronunciation there. Multilateral aid. NGO. Okay, those are initials. That's an acronym. NGO refers to non-governmental organization. NGO. So, international aid can be described as, in its most basic form, as assistance that flows from one country to another, usually from developed countries to developing countries. The flow is from the donor, the one who gives, to the recipient, the one who receives. International aid is also commonly called foreign aid, overseas aid, or foreign assistance. The contribution can be of money, equipment, or services. There are many, many types of international aid, too many to list here, but let's look at some of the most common. Humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is the assistance that usually gets into the newspapers. Humanitarian aid is meant to help in the short term. A good example of humanitarian aid would be a donation of food or medicine from one country to another after a man-made catastrophe, like a civil war, or an environmental disaster, like an earthquake or a flood. Humanitarian aid. Do you hear the root of humanitarian? It's the word human. Humanitarian. Next, technical assistance. Technical assistance is aid involving highly educated or trained personnel, such as agricultural engineers, for example, who assist with a program of development. technical assistance. Bilateral aid. Well, bilateral aid refers to foreign assistance from one government to another. A related expression is tied aid. Tied aid is when the donor government gives money but requires the recipient country to use the money to buy from them. Remember, multilateral aid. Multilateral aid, for example, is the situation where the World Bank or UNICEF pool aid from one or more sources, like governments, for example, and distribute it among many recipients. Multilateral aid. Multi, many, right? NGOs. Well, it's common for donors to use non-governmental organizations, known as NGOs, to receive and distribute their contributions. Okay, well, let's just go over our vocabulary one last time. Donor. The institution, maybe it's a country, that makes a donation. Donor. Recipient. A person or an institution that receives the donation. Humanitarian aid. Well, that's short-term help, like money, food, or medical supplies. Technical assistance. Well, that's where donors share their skills and instruction. Technical assistance. Tied aid. That's foreign aid that must be spent in the country providing the aid. If it's tied, it's connected. There's an obligatory connection. It's tied. Bilateral aid. That's assistance given from one government to another. Bilateral, two. Multilateral aid. Assistance by governments to international organizations like the UN or the World Bank, for example. There's many, many more examples of multilateral aid. NGO. That stands for a non-governmental organization. Well, that's all for today. If you have any suggestions or comments, or if you're interested in our courses, visit our website, www.englishforeconomists.com, and you can send me a message from there. I would really very much enjoy hearing from you. The English for Economists podcast is new, so please share it with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, this is Alan Robert wishing you a fantastic day. Take care.